Hello my friends, welcome back to the kitchen. We're going to make our really quick Bolognese today, or like an Italian meat sauce. We're going to have some pasta for dinner, so I'm going to make it early so it's done because I got some other stuff to do, and then we can just reheat it as needed for dinner. But I wanted to kind of show you how to put this thing together. It's super easy and super fast, so you don't have to cook it all day long. So here we go. So in our pan that's already hot, we're going to put about 3 tablespoons of really good olive oil. Takes a little bit longer out of our little bottle here. That's about right. Then we're going to throw in our onion. We chopped it up pretty good. And then we're going to let that cook and get soft. Now many of these Bolognese recipes call for the whole trinity, the onions, carrots, and celery. I'm not a big fan of celery, so most of the time I leave it out. Every now and then when I make like a soup or something like that, I'll throw in some celery, but maybe half the rate what they usually use. But I am going to put the carrots in this, but we're going to do something a little bit different so we can speed up the process, because carrots don't really break down that fast. Alright, it's been probably 5 minutes or so. We have our onions sweated out. They're getting translucent. So we're going to add our carrots. And what I'm going to add is some of our home canned carrots from our garden. Now, you may not like cooked carrots, but these are cooked fresh from the garden. They were raw packed, and they still retain all of the flavor and all the nutrients in here that will get through the cooking process. And the reason we're using these canned carrots, because they've already been pressure canned, they're already soft, and it'd be like you simmered these things all day already. So we're going to add half a jar of our cooked carrots. And what that carrot does, you'll see traditional recipes, they'll like grate a carrot, or they will chop a carrot up real fine. The carrot adds that sweetness to counterbalance the acidity of the tomatoes. Some people skip the carrot altogether, and they'll just add a little bit of sugar to their sauce to counterbalance the acidity. But old school recipes use the carrots. And you can see these carrots are sufficiently cooked to where they just mash right up and disintegrate. They will cook right into this sauce, and you won't even see a carrot when we're done. So we're just going to warm that up a little bit. And then we're going to add our garlic. We don't add our garlic early because we don't want it to get bitter. We'll add it right now, so we just want to heat it up, sweat it just a little bit, get some of that garlic flavor going on. Just start releasing some of the oils in the garlic. And we're on medium heat, by the way. You don't want to go crazy on high heat. So the next thing we're going to add is our canned beef that we did this year. And because it's been canned and pressure cooked just like the carrots, this is already fork tender. So it'll be like you simmered this all day long. So we'll put this in now. If it'll come out of the jar. Apparently I'm going to have to get a spoon. Hold on. Alright, back after it. So we want all the juice out of the jar, all the meat out of the jar. And this meat, just like the carrots, it's pretty much just going to kind of disintegrate into the sauce and be super tender when we eat it. So we're going to let this come back up to a simmer. And we'll probably turn the heat back up to high so we can cook some of this liquid out. We don't want the liquid in the mix at this point. And then we're going to add our other stuff. Alright, you can see a lot of our liquid has been reduced out of here. So now we're going to add a half a cup of kind of a dry red wine. About that much. And then we're going to stir that in. And we're going to do the same thing with this. We're going to let this simmer until just about all of that liquid is simmered out. that's going to do a couple things. It's going to bring the consistency of our sauce down to where it's thicker. And it's also going to cook out any alcohol in that wine. So you end up just with that red wine flavor and not the alcohol. It's always important to cook the alcohol out. And you can see the carrots are pretty much non-existent now. You can see a little piece of one here and there, but even that's going to disappear before long. The meat is really super tender. It's going to be like Sunday gravy, like you cook this stuff all day long. So let's let that simmer. If you need to see how we canned any of this stuff during the past year, go back and search those videos. You can see how we did the carrots and the meat and all that. Super easy stuff. Yeah, it couldn't get any easier. Alright, most of our liquid is simmered out. We're going to go ahead and add a whole jar of our canned tomatoes from the garden. And we're going to stir that in. Now you'll see a lot of recipes call for tomato paste. One thing that the tomato paste does is it gives your sauce a lot more red color than just adding the tomatoes. The other reason people use tomato paste is because it's already been cooked down. You don't have to cook the liquid out of it. So you don't have to spend all day cooking the liquid out of those because it's already cooked out. But our sauce is not going to be quite as red as your normal sauce because we don't put the tomato paste in. One, because I don't have any, and two, because I just don't have to have it. So we're going to bring this back up to a simmer, and we're going to start adding our dry spices to it. Alright, we've added a half a tablespoon of oregano, half a tablespoon of basil, both dry, and 2 bay leaves. And we're going to add about probably a quarter to an eighth of a teaspoon of crushed red pepper. Just to give it just a touch of a bite. We don't want to make it spicy. So we'll stir all of those spices in. And remember, when you're using dry herbs, you want to only use a third of what you would normally use if it was fresh. So if it calls for a tablespoon of fresh herb, you only want to use a teaspoon of a dry herb. Alright, we will let that simmer a bit. And then we're going to get our pasta going. Alright, we're back to a simmer. The next dry ingredient we're going to add, and it's pretty much the last of the spices, is a teaspoon of paprika. And that gives a little flavor like you were to cook some like bell pepper in it or something. Gives it that just slight little kind of peppery flavor. Not like a black pepper, but sort of like if you'd cook some bell peppers in it or whatever. So I know this looks brown on camera, but in person it looks pretty nice and red. Looks more like chili on camera. But it smells amazing in here. We've got our pasta water going. Now when I make pasta, I like to use like a Rotel or a Rotini pasta because it holds onto the sauce really well and it's not a big long noodle that you have to negotiate while you're eating and it gets all over your face. Most of the time Kelly and I eat in the living room, so that makes it a lot better. We can just eat with a spoon. Now I wanted to show you this pot that we do the pasta in, and this is my pretty much my soup pot and everything, and I have a whole set of these all the way down to 1 quart, I believe. But their lids have the strainer right in the lid, so you line it up with the pour spout, and it's got the small holes as well. When I'm cooking, I put them to the side, so this is kind of closed up. But you can strain right out of the pot. You don't need to mess up a colander or anything like that. Love these. They're made by Wherever. They don't sponsor us or anything, but I've had these pots for years. Now, if you had the tomato paste and you wanted to use it, by all means use it. I would use probably maybe about a half of one of those little cans in this recipe. Use a whole one if you want. But you'll probably have to adjust your spices if you do that because you're adding more tomato to the pan. So you might need to kick up your spices just a little bit. Now you've noticed I haven't added salt and pepper yet. I'm going to add that towards the end as kind of a final spice check because you don't want to get it too salty by salting all along the way because there's a little bit of salt in those canned tomatoes, probably a little bit of salt in the canned meat, anything else that you use like that. So I hold off till right before we serve this before I put any salt in it. Alright, the sauce is simmering real nicely. We're going to simmer to where most of that liquid's gone. So, like if you pull the spatula through it, you're not going to see water close up on the bottom of the pan. You'll just see the bottom of the pan once you stir through it. Now, this recipe is part of a group of recipes that I keep handy that use 1 quart of our canned tomatoes. So, a lot of the recipes I develop are based on that, so it's very handy. You saw how much tomatoes we canned during the garden season. This is how we utilize them. So I've got a chili recipe, the pasta sauce recipe, the Bolognese like we're doing right now, like a goulash recipe. Anything that uses tomatoes, base it on 1 jar of your fresh canned tomatoes, and it makes it super convenient. Now, whenever you're cooking pasta, always salt the water. Put a good couple tablespoons of water or salt in that pot of water because pasta will not season itself. And if you don't put the salt in there, the pasta is just going to have kind of a out-of-the-box kind of flavor. Now, the reason the salt, you don't see it very much when cooking pasta, even macaroni and cheese recipes, if you remember back when you were a kid, called for some salt to be put in the water as you cooked your pasta. The reason they got rid of that is so they could show on the ingredient list that the sodium level was not high because everybody got all crazy about low sodium. So they removed the salt from all those recipes. But don't do that. You want your pasta to have flavor, and it's going to pick up even more flavor later, and we'll show you how. Alright, when the sauce is just about ready, find your 2 bay leaves, take them out. They've given up their flavor. And remember what we said about being able to see the bottom of the pan when you stir it? So, see that? We're almost there, where you can see the bottom of the pan. It doesn't come back together right away. We're almost there. So what we're going to do is to go ahead and throw our pasta in, because by the time our pasta cooks, we will be there. Okay, we've got a whole pound of pasta put in here, and always make sure you stir right after you put it into the water, the salted water, because you don't want that pasta to stick, and then that'll keep it from turning into a big old blob. So we'll come back when this pasta is al dente. Now I want to explain al dente because a lot of people are confused as to what it is and why you do it. I know I was for years. Al dente is when your pasta is almost cooked, but it's still got a little bit of bite to it, to where it's almost not all the way cooked. And that's when you want to pull it off. And it's not because people like eating pasta that is al dente. What's going to happen is that pasta will finish cooking in the sauce. And as it finishes cooking, it's going to draw up some of that moisture from the sauce, which also draws in flavor to the pasta. So your levels of flavor all through that pasta, and it doesn't taste just like, again, out of the cardboard box pasta. You don't want your pasta detracting from your sauce by tasting plain. That's why you salt it. That's why you cook it al dente, to where that flavor in that sauce gets into the pasta. Once your pasta gets close, turn your fire back down to medium or low. If you put it on low, you want to bring it back to medium when we throw the pasta in. So can you see now how the bottom of that pan stays clean for a little bit? We're like right on the verge of being right where we need to be. So if your pasta box says to cook your pasta for 12 minutes, al dente is going to be around 10 minutes, just to give you kind of a gauge. Some of your pasta boxes will actually tell you that. But I always pull a little piece of pasta out on my spoon, throw it out on the counter, let it cool a little bit, and I try it, and then that tells me where it needs to come off. Alright, our sauce is where it needs to be. You can see how we can clean the bottom of the pan. Nobody likes runny spaghetti sauce, so make sure you take it to this point. Now, our pasta is also al dente. We've taken out and reserved a half a cup of the cooking liquid. We're now going to drain this. Once we drain it really well, we're going to put the pasta into the sauce, not the sauce into the pasta. I'm not exactly sure why, but that's the way the old school Italians do it. The pasta goes in the sauce. Alright, the pasta is in the sauce. We're going to take our half a cup of reserved cooking liquid and put that in there. And then we're going to stir this all up. Now, we're at medium-low heat. And we're going to cook this pasta in the sauce like we said before. And then we have another couple steps that are going to kick this up even a better notch. So let me get this all stirred in. Alright, we got it all incorporated. If you notice before we put the pasta in there, that sauce looked like it'd been cooked all day long. Everything was super tender and disintegrated into the sauce. So people that you feed this stuff to are going to think, man, they slaved over the stove all day on this. So we want to cook kind of the same way we did with the sauce. We want to cook it until you can pull it apart in the center and there's no liquid that gathers into the center of the pot. So we're going to cook the pasta in there and then we'll show you what those next steps are. Alright, our noodles are done. They're no longer al dente. If you open up the bottom of the pot here, it is no longer full of liquid. So now what you want to do is take a half a cube of butter and throw it in there. And we're going to melt that and stirring it occasionally. And once that's melted, I'll show you what's next. Now some recipes you'll see instead of butter for the dairy, they'll use actually cream or milk to put into the sauce. Lightens up the color and gives it that creaminess. But I like the butter because the butter adds a really nice silky texture to it. And the reason we wait until that moisture is cooked and that the noodles absorb that moisture, because if you get a lot of oil on those noodles, it'll keep the water from going into those noodles. Alright, the last step is a half a cup of Parmesan or Romano cheese. And you stir that in. Make sure that everything's broke up real well as you stir it in. And that's going to give it a fantastic flavor. Now I recommend, even if you're using like store-bought sauce and stuff like that and really won't want to jump through all these hoops, don't skip those two last steps or cooking your sauce down a little bit and putting that little bit of pasta water in there, cooking your noodles al dente. You can still do that if you're using store-bought sauce. It's super good. Once you get the Parmesan stirred in, it's also now's the time to taste it for the salt and pepper. If it needs a little more salt and some pepper in it, go ahead and add that now. We're probably going to serve up some garlic toast with this. If you look back at our lasagna recipe, we show you how to make the garlic bread. But you can do that on a lot smaller scale if you're not feeding a big crowd of people. Just throw a couple slices of nice bread in the toaster and toast it and use that same method. And in a pinch, I've even used just butter and then sprinkled a little garlic salt on it just for a quick garlic toast. It works. But you're going to love this recipe. It's going to taste like you've cooked this stuff all day long. Crazy, crazy good. So it's right at lunchtime right now, so I'm going to probably have a little bowl before I let this sit and cool off. So we'll just reheat it, whatever we want, our portions for dinner. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy. We love you guys. If you enjoy our channel, make sure you like and subscribe, but you don't have to. We're not going to beg you to do that like everybody else. But if you want to see it, you have to. That's the only way to be notified. So if you have like-minded friends that would enjoy our content, share it with them. We like to get out to as many people as we can to show them the old way of doing stuff. So see you next time, guys.